Welcome to MacStories Unwind, a weekly review of everything MacStories and more. I'm John Voorhees, and with me, as always, is Federico Fetici. Hey, Federico.
Hello, John. Happy Friday. I
Yeah,
guess.
it's Friday, right? I mean, I don't know that Friday means a whole lot to you and me, really, and especially me with lockdown, but sure, let's celebrate.
It used to mean a lot more before when I was younger. Like it was Friday, was the weekend. No more responsibilities, no more homework.
No,
And
I
now it
know.
just means it just means that we gotta finish the newsletter and put out the podcasts and all the things.
Right.
And also the weekend doesn't mean anything anymore. So yeah, it's because I'm writing the iOS review. So yeah, still, you know.
Yeah, it's funny because I feel like actually my weeks are more anchored than they ever have been in my life, only because even though I'm at home still, because you and I both work at home anyway, but we have very specific things that happen on Mondays when AppStories comes out, and very specific things that happen on Fridays when the newsletter and this show come out, and that kind of keeps me grounded in what day it is. It's been harder for my family who have been home for months and months now and never have a clue what time, what day it is or what's going on.
Yeah.
All right. So let's dig into the stories this week, Federico. The first one I want to mention is a short link post we had about Apple, who is partnering with historically black colleges and universities to create coding centers. And this is kind of an expansion on a couple of things. First,
Mm.
you probably remember, I guess it was at the beginning of June, Tim Cook published his open letter on racism
Yeah.
and talked a little bit about what the company was going to do to play its part in combating that. And this is one manifestation of that. This is one thing to follow up on it. Plus, just last week, Apple expanded their curriculum on Everyone Can Code and designing with Swift. And those education initiatives have been around for a long time. And this kind of fits hand in hand with that. So there's going to be 10 centers that are set up at various black colleges and universities around the country. And those will be centers for learning to code. So great program. Looks like it'll be very interesting. It'll be interesting to see how that rolls out, given that a lot of colleges aren't really going back necessarily to in-person learning, but hopefully they'll get those up and running pretty quickly. The second story I wanted to cover before turning it over to you is Pixelmator Pro 1.7 came out.
Okay.
This adds some interesting features. And one of these, I really want to hear what Sylvia thinks about it if she gets a chance to use it. And that is canvas rotation. Because what I discovered, canvas rotation, I don't think makes as much sense when it's strictly on the Mac. Because what this is doing, instead of rotating just the image, it's rotating the canvas on which all of your layers sit. So what it works really well with is Sidecar. If you have Pixelmator Pro running on an iPad in Sidecar, you can turn the image just by, doing the kind of twisting gesture with your fingers on the iPad Pro. And that's really good if you're an artist and using the Apple Pencil and you just kind of want to twist it around and get it from a different angle as you're writing, depending on how you draw. So it's a cool feature. I haven't used it a lot yet, but I think it works particularly well on the iPad. It's a feature that works with if you're not using your hands to manipulate it, there's a little disc that shows up in the bottom of the screen when you activate when you use either a trackpad or you go up in the menu bar and use the view menu. You can do that, and as you use the trackpad, as you get to 90 degrees, there's a little haptic feedback. And not many apps I've found on the Mac use haptic feedback on the trackpad, but Pixelmator Pro does. And it's kind of nice because it gives you that little feedback so that you know that you've hit 90 degrees, which I like a lot. Type to Path is a text tool in the app that lets you type along, an arbitrary line that you define or a shape or an existing border of a shape that's in one of your images. And then they just added something that I think is just handy for someone, especially if they're getting started out with the app, which is a better welcome screen. So the welcome screen now it's kind of divided into the left and the right, and on the right, it has your recent documents that you've worked on. And on the left, it gives you the option to open a new one, which you can pick from a bunch of templates, or to either pick a photo from the Photos library or from anywhere on your Mac. So really nice update to Pixelmator Pro. this is an app that I use all the time, and it only keeps getting better. And I think it really is starting to knock on, Adobe Photoshop's door a little bit. Now I know Photoshop people will tell me that it's got far fewer features, but if your needs are relatively simple, like mine are, it can handle an awful lot of what I would otherwise try to do in Photoshop.
Very cool. I will ask Sylvia to check it out then for sure. I always love the design of the Pixelmator products. They're like so Apple-like. Speaking of Apple, they released iOS 13.6 earlier this week. This is likely the last major update to iOS 13, as Apple is now switching to the iOS 14 beta and release cycle. 13.6 as I would say, two headline features. One of them is support for digital car keys. So we got a glimpse of this at WWDC. Apple mentioned car key as a new feature of modern iPhones and compatible vehicles, starting with one specific BMW 5 Series model that is available now or will be available shortly. Anyway, you gotta have a specific BMW car to use digital car keys. But what's cool
Right.
about it is that your phone will serve as your car key, and it won't be limited to just, of course, unlocking the car and starting the car. But because it's digital, you can also share the car key with someone else. You have iMessage integration, you have wallet integration, and you also have family sharing integration. So you can have things like parental control for setting driving restrictions for your kids, which I think is really smart and really clever. And one of the benefits of adopting this kind of digital feature, because it's essentially an app on your phone, so you have all these kinds of modern integrations, which I think is super cool. And it's available in 13.6, but once again, it's at launch it will be compatible with just one BMW 5 Series vehicle, and supposedly more coming in the future. The other headline feature is new functionalities for Apple News and Apple News Plus. Now, there's a couple of things here. We knew that this was coming because 9to5Mac and a bunch of other publications had screenshots of this feature before, but now it's official. Audio stories in Apple News Plus. So Apple News Plus is going to feature audio versions of select stories from select magazines for Apple News Plus subscribers. You will be able to either read these stories or listen to the audio version, which will be produced by Apple with professional narrators. This is very cool, actually. The integration between the magazine printed version and the audio version in Apple News Plus is quite interesting, as Ryan mentioned in his coverage on MacStories. You will be able to choose whether you want to read or listen to a story. No matter which flavor you start consuming, you will be able to switch to the other one without losing your place. So if you start reading a story and you decide, well, actually, I want to listen to this one, you can start listening and the audio will pick up from that spot. And the same is true vice versa. If you start listening to a story, but decide, actually, I want to read this one, if you select the read article, the read story menu option, you will be taken to that spot in the story. So that sort of integration between audio and text, I think, is very cool. And this is limited to Apple News Plus subscribers, and Apple is promising around 20 audio stories a week.
It reminds me a little bit of what they're doing with podcasts and the text search in podcasts. I wonder if these are related technologies
Possibly.
under the hoods.
Yeah, it's possible. Apple is also expanding its local coverage to specific big cities in the US. So I believe Los Angeles and New York and San Francisco, they now have this local coverage in Apple News, and you can follow the topic for your local coverage. And I think it's pretty cool. It's something that I would love to see internationally. But I can imagine that it's going to be years before we don't even have Apple News in Italy. So
Right.
Probably never going to happen. And also, Apple is now producing a daily news podcast. I haven't listened to this one, but I know that a couple of our friends have, and they say that it's pretty good. It's called Apple News Today. It's available. You can listen in Apple News, or you can listen in Apple Podcasts, and you can subscribe. I believe it's just a regular podcast, and I believe you can listen anywhere. It's hosted by Shumita Basu and Duarte Geraldino, and every day they will, every weekday morning, they will guide you through some of the most interesting and important news of the day. So, a couple of cool initiatives here, I think, from Apple News, both for free users as well as for News Plus subscribers. I am not personally paying for News Plus anymore, but this is the kind of stuff that I think Apple should be doing to expand their coverage and to have this sort of neat integration between audio and text, news and podcasts. I think this is exactly what they should be focusing on right now. And I look forward to start listening to Apple News today, because I think, obviously the daily is by the New York Times. It's one of the most popular daily news shows.
Sure.
And I want to see what Apple can do here. They hired, of course, professionals to take care of these sort of projects. So it's very interesting what they're doing.
Yeah, it is interesting. I think it adds value to News Plus. I'm not subscribing to it right now myself either. But one of the things that I found kind of frustrating was that there were things that were behind News Plus that I could just find with a Google search. But things like audio versions of articles are not something that I can just find with a Google search. So, yeah, it's nice that they're adding some additional value there as well. I want to tell you, Federico, about a short review that I did this week of the Eve Cam. Now, Eve is a company that makes all sorts of home automation gear. They originally were part of Elgato and then split off, which is interesting because Elgato makes all kinds of, gamer equipment, whether it's streaming devices, recording, lighting. They do all kinds of things now. But Eve is a separate company. They make all sorts of oftentimes Bluetooth controlled HomeKit devices. And for the longest time, I didn't use any of their products because I was concerned that the Bluetooth wouldn't be strong enough to, work through walls or might be flaky as a result. But I've been pleasantly surprised. I really, like all the things I've tried, and I've tried electrical outlets and door sensors before now. Now, the Eve Cam is Wi-Fi. The Eve Cam works on Wi-Fi. It's a really small, slim, lightweight, low-profile black camera that works with HomeKit secure video. And what I like about this, I've used Logitech Circle 2 cameras in the past. This is not a complete replacement for one of those because Logitech's cameras can work outside. So if you need something for outside, you can forget about the Eve Cam because it's strictly indoors. But I like it better in the sense that it's smaller, it's black, it tends to blend in with its surroundings a lot better than something with the white plastic. Now, Logitech has come out with something called, almost simultaneously, called the Logitech View, which I have not tried, which is also a very similar slim, black, matte black camera and it can work indoors and outdoors. But the Eve Cam, as an indoor camera, works particularly well. It tilts up and down, rotates left and right. One thing that's really nice, especially if you live in an apartment building or something and don't want to, drill holes in the wall or whatever, it comes with a metal plate that the camera sticks to magnetically. And the plate can either be screwed in the wall or it can just use double-sided sticky tape because the camera is so lightweight that it's not a problem. The camera is not battery powered. It does have to plug into the wall. My experience with Canary cameras has led me to conclude that that's totally okay because even the Canaries, which have pretty good sized batteries in them, would drain very, very quickly if used in wireless mode. So I'm perfectly fine with having a wire there, but you have to have obviously an electrical outlet available. I set mine up near my back door, and it's got I think it's 150-degree field of view. So it picks up the back door as well as a window that's near the back door really well. And because it's HomeKit, it can do all the stuff you can do in HomeKit, whether it's detect people or pets or vehicles, can send you alerts, can be part of automations and shortcuts. It does all that. And I think one of the things that's interesting about this camera is that Eve has gone all in on the secure home video. They don't have their own service. There's no Eve security system or video storage system that you sign up for. This works strictly through HomeKit and iCloud. So if you have a big enough iCloud, iCloud plan, like if you have the 2 terabyte one like me, you can use 5 cameras. If you have, I think it's the 200 gigabyte one, you can use 1 camera with it. And though the stored video, which I think it's 10 days gets stored, is not counted against your iCloud account. So it's just kind of comes along for the ride with that subscription. And I've been really happy with it. I was already using HomeKit Secure Video with the Logitech cameras. I added this in, and it works just like another part of that system without, even though it's by a different manufacturer, which makes my life just a lot easier. So definitely recommend it.
Nice. Very quickly, because I haven't actually played with this, it's not the text editor that I use, but Ulysses 20, version 20 launched this week, and Ryan did a review on the site. And there's really 2 major features in Ulysses version 20. The first one is the new dashboard, which is available both on iPhone and iPad as well as the Mac. So it's available on every platform where Ulysses is available. The dashboard is essentially a sidebar that contains a lot more information and features than before. So you can now use the dashboard. It used to be like this sidebar that only contained like your notes and your keywords and local attachments. Now everything has been organized in sections, and you have this segmented control that allows you to switch between these different pages. So you can still do keywords and notes and local image attachments, but you also have, and this is a genius feature that I wish more text editors would offer, an outline mode for navigating the story. And it's not the usual outline that only like scans your markdown document for headings and subheadings and allows you to jump to those elements. It also scans the document for footnotes and links and lets you instantly navigate to those elements in the text, which I think is an absolutely genius feature that I would love to have in IA Writer as well. And of course, the dashboard also has a main page which sort of collects all of these key stats and details about your document. So things like your word count, your character count, the reading time, writing goals, if you have any. And if you want, you can tap on any individual element from the main dashboard view, and you can switch to the specific page in the sidebar to view more details about that. So that's pretty cool. And if you use Ulysses, and especially if you attach a lot of metadata to your sheets, I think this is something that you should be taking a look at. And the other feature, which is Mac only for now, coming to iPad later, I believe, later this year in the fall, is revision mode. Revision mode is an example of a feature that the Ulysses team has been able to add because they are now a subscription-based business, and therefore they can implement external services such as the one the revision mode is based on at no additional charge for people. So revision mode, it essentially boils down to spell checking and grammar and style checking. So it detects errors in your prose, and it works in 20 languages, and it shows you suggestions, and it tells you why certain elements should be changed. What's different here is that unlike other grammar and style checking features, I believe IA Writer received one recently in an app update. This one is based on an external service called Language Tool. And Language Tool has this new native integration with Ulysses. Again, part of the Ulysses subscription, no additional charge for you, and it supports 20 languages. So not just English, but 20 different languages. So the only downside, I guess, is that this is Mac only for now, not available on iPhone or iPad. So hopefully that's coming soon, because it's a very compelling package at this point. If you write in Ulysses, you have a dashboard, and you have this revision mode. So once again, Ulysses having my attention, but I still personally prefer IA Writer because of that extra flexibility that I have with custom themes and content blocks. But I believe at this point, really, if you are serious about writing on your iPad or Mac, it either comes down to IA Writer or Ulysses. Really, yeah. It's these 2 apps at this point.
Right. That dashboard is fantastic. I think it's a great evolution of the side panel that they've had in the past. Yeah. So definitely looks great. I want to mention a couple of things really quickly before we get to the club, and that is Apple published on YouTube what is, I guess, a sequel of a video they did earlier in the year called The Underdogs, which was where a team of coworkers designed a circular pizza box, not unlike the Cafe Max pizza box that has been written about here and there in the past. This one is called The Whole Work From Home Thing. And it's a pretty long video. It's several minutes long, and it follows the same team of colleagues at a company as they design packaging for a box. And it shows them using all sorts of different Apple devices, Apple built-in apps, but also some third-party apps, including MindNode, which I know you're using for your iOS and iPadOS review this year. So that was really nice to see that there was some third-party stuff in there. They mentioned InDesign as well. And then if you haven't checked out AppStories, check out the episode we did this last week, because I interviewed Mike Hurley while Federico was away on vacation, and we had a really interesting discussion about all the tools that he uses to manage the parts of Relay FM that he's in charge of. And I thought it was a really interesting discussion of, especially when you get to dealing with 30 shows and all the hosts involved in that. Lots of interesting insights and tidbits from Mike there. So check that out as well. Federico, I'm going to turn it over to you for the club.
Yes, so I have come back to the club as well this week. I personally shared a couple of shortcuts. As you can tell, I'm in the process of rethinking my home screen and rethinking what I do in terms of the shortcuts widget and how many different shortcuts widgets I can actually install, each for a different folder on my home screen. So I wrote about these reminders widgets that I put together, and these shortcuts that allow me, thanks to Compact UI in iOS 14, to break down my reminders in different subsets of lists. So the shortcuts are an evolution of shortcuts that I believe I shared at some point in the past, called work tasks and personal tasks. The idea being that thanks to reminders integration with shortcuts, I can filter reminders to get any reminder that is either due or overdue from one of multiple lists. The idea being that my work tasks may be organized in the list called MacStories articles, but there's also another list called Club MacStories, and there's also another list called admin, whereas personal tasks may be stored in the reminders list, as well as shopping and family. So the idea being, how can I take tasks that are in one of these groups of lists, and how can I present them on the home screen thanks to Compact UI? So I share shortcuts. Really, they're simple shortcuts, 5 action shortcuts, I believe. But it shows you how really useful shortcuts don't have to be long or complex to do something very useful. Even more so thanks to Compact UI and the ability to see lists and even images, all kinds of data on the home screen as a shortcuts notification in iOS 14. You, John, I believe, wrote about GoodLinks as your favorite.
I did.
So how do you like GoodLinks?
GoodLinks has become my Read It Later app of choice at this point. I really like the modern UI. It follows a lot of the modern conventions on iOS and has shortcut integration. And I particularly like the tagging, because what I've been doing is storing away articles for later in the week with tags like weekly, so I can put them in MacStories Weekly, or just reading, which is just kind of like general personal reading, or Big Sur for things that I want to read related to the review that I'll do in the fall. So it's a fantastic app. It's been around now for, I guess it's been about a month or so, but it just recently updated the Mac app, which is why I really wanted to include it in our favorites this week, because the Mac app was one of the weaker points when I first reviewed this app, but it's come a long way and it works a lot better on the Mac now. It's actually got a share extension and some other things that make it a full-fledged and equal member of the family of versions of GoodLinks. So I was really happy to see that, and it's made me use it even more. And then I guess the other thing worth mentioning for this week on the club is that Ryan has taken up experimenting with widgets on his iPhone and iPad, which I wrote about. Yes, I wrote about a week ago or so, and he's doing some of the same things and wrote about it. And it's widgets are a lot of fun, and it's really interesting to see how people are using them differently on the iPhone and iPad in particular, I think.
Yes, we all have widgets on our minds this summer.
We do. Just wait till the third-party ones start showing up.
Ah, yes.
Okay, Federico, I want to thank our sponsor this week. This is our sponsor not only for this episode of Unwind, but for all of MacStories this week, and that is Magic Lasso Ad Block. Magic Lasso Ad Block is an efficient and high-performance ad blocker for the iPhone, iPad, and the Mac. With it, you get a cleaner, faster web experience without any ads. As you know, as a native Safari content blocking extension, Magic Lasso blocks intrusive ads, pop-ups, and trackers when you're browsing the web. And it means that all those sites load a lot faster too, because you don't have all that junk loading as you open a page. And it also helps protect your privacy and your security as well. The Magic Lasso folks also respect their users. They don't accept payment from advertisers, and it's 100% supported by the community of over 150,000 users. The latest version, which is 2.0, added a community-based allow list feature, which is really interesting. It's a list that's crowdsourced that whitelists certain sites. The update also added a battery boost mode too. It targets JavaScript, which is notorious for draining batteries on mobile devices. And there's a new 3-pane UI as well that looks just terrific. So, go check it out. Download it for free today on the Magic Lasso website or the App Store or Mac App Store. And I just want to thank Magic Lasso for their support of both Unwind and MacStories this week. Okay, Federico, hit me with your Unwind pick of the week. You've left it blank here, so I'm going to be surprised along with the listeners.
Yes. All right. So it's been a very busy week for me. And unfortunately, when I'm doing this heavy research stuff, I cannot listen to much new music. And I don't, I try to cut distractions as much as possible. However, I do still need my nightly, I guess, dose of Pokemon. But this week has been different. So I've been trying all week to hatch a shiny Pokemon, a very specific one. And for those of you not familiar with this concept, shiny Pokemon are like rare versions of a Pokemon. I mean, if you played Pokemon Go on your phone, you know what a shiny is.
Right.
And playing on the Nintendo Switch, the shiny version of a Pokemon, when you try to hatch one by breeding Pokemon, you have one chance in 512 of that egg resulting in a shiny Pokemon. So very, very low odds. And I've been trying to hatch a specific one all week. And at the moment of recording this, it's still nothing. I believe at the moment I'm well over 1,300 eggs, and still none of those hatched a shiny one. And in trying to understand how other people put up with this, how other people find the patience to do this, because in case you're not familiar, there's an entire, I want to say, niche of Twitch streamers and YouTubers who stream every day their so-called shiny hunts. So shiny hunting would be the idea of trying to get shiny Pokemon. And people do this with Pokemon Go on the phone. People do this with Pokemon Sword on the Nintendo Switch. People do this with old Pokemon games for the Nintendo DS or the Game Boy. But one of these content creators that I really like is aDrive. aDrive is streaming every day on Twitch. He has a really, really excellent YouTube channel. And is I've been watching a lot of Pokemon content on YouTube and Twitch over the past few months. But when it comes to shiny Pokemon, aDrive is the person to follow, I think. So I am going to link, John. I'm going to send you a link to this collection that he did, this video roundup of all his reactions to hatching a shiny Pokemon, because that's the whole deal, right? So these people,
Sure.
aDrive streams for hours on Twitch and YouTube, and you only get that one specific moment when you actually manage to find the shiny Pokemon. And so the reaction is the thing that people tune in for, right? To see his face, to see his
So
reaction.
keep people watching too, right?
To keep people watching, because and you have a counter on screen, right? So right now, for example, he's streaming right now, and the shiny hunt that he just concluded, it took him 433 eggs.
Oh, wow.
So a relatively short one, by all means. I mean,
yeah,
he's done
compared to you.
Compared to, I mean, but he's also done, like, he has a log on his profile, and you can see this, like, some hunts took him like 3,000 eggs. So,
oh, wow.
Can be very long, can take multiple days to do this. So I'm going to link you to the reaction video that shows multiple reactions to different Pokemon. It's very funny because it's like, you can't watch these videos and not smile at the reaction of this guy when he finally manages to get one. So, YouTube channel, if you're into shiny Pokemon at all, if you've ever been into this idea of, like, you really like a Pokemon and you want to get the rare version of it, aDrive on Twitch and YouTube. And also, like, in doing this, I realized, if I'm playing for like a couple of hours at night and I want to make sure that I finally manage to get the shiny Pokemon, I might as well put on a video of aDrive to keep me company and to make me feel less miserable.
Oh, boy.
Also, for the record, this is the first and last time that I'm doing this. I'm gonna let aDrive and other folks do this every day. This is exhausting, John. Like, I have no idea why I thought this was gonna be a good idea. Like 1,300 eggs. This is insanity. I don't understand how people do this, but still.
Yeah, I don't believe you, actually. I think you'll be back to do it again because
you'll
finally get your shiny, and you'll want to get that little boost again next time.
Absolutely not. I will not be doing this ever again. So all the shinies that I got were like happy accidents. I never done it on purpose. And it almost feels like the moment you do it intentionally, that's when it's gonna take you like a week to get one. So never again. I very much prefer playing online or playing single player. No more shiny hunts for me. This is the first and only time that I'm doing this.
Okay. Well, for you, Federico, I have a movie. Maybe you can take a break from your shiny hunt and watch a movie this weekend. And it's a movie called Mr. Jones. And Mr. Jones came out in 2019, and somehow this escaped my attention at the time, but it's pretty highly rated on like Rotten Tomatoes, up in the 80s. And it's based on true events, but it's a fictionalized story. And it tells the story of a Welsh reporter named Gareth Jones, who traveled from England to the Soviet Union in the years leading up to World War II. And he had, I guess, in real life, he had interviewed Hitler. And so he had some notoriety for having done that. And he also worked with one of the former prime ministers of England. So he was able to get himself to the Soviet Union on the pretense of wanting to interview Stalin. And he never got to interview Stalin. But while he was there in the movie, he jumps on a train and travels down to the Ukraine. Now, he did that against restrictions that were only allowed reporters to stay in Moscow, and where they were fed very carefully information about what was going on in the Soviet Union. And in Europe, at least as the story is told, there was a lot of people who were impressed with what Stalin had been able to do with the Soviet Union because it had this booming economy. They were building all these factories, all of the things, there's a lot of money being made in the Soviet Union. And what Jones discovers when he travels to Ukraine is that it's all on the backs of the people there, and that there was this man-made famine that was happening, which ultimately killed millions of Ukrainians, where what they were doing was they were farming for the Soviet Union and then sending all the food back to Moscow. And so the people there were starving. And this was a big revelation that no one knew at the time. He got arrested. It's kind of I don't want to give away the whole story, but it's very much a drama kind of combined with a thriller, because these Soviets realize that he's traveling around in parts of the country he's not supposed to, and they're out looking for him. Various things happen. Eventually, he gets back to England, and he tells a story, and nobody believes him. And so part of the story is also him trying to convince people that, no, there are actually horrible things happening in Ukraine. And it was, it's a little heavy, obviously, but it also has a lot of drama and kind of that chase kind of thrill type movie aspect to it, which I like. It stars James Norton, Vanessa Kirby, and Peter Sarsgaard, I guess is how you say it. But actors I've seen in other things, but whose work I'm not super familiar with. But I watched it last weekend, and it's really good. I rented it from iTunes, so I'm sure it's in plenty of other places too. So definitely one worth checking out, especially if you're a history buff. Even George Orwell makes a bit of an appearance in this because I guess Animal Farm, his book, was inspired by these events and the story. So he has a role in the he has a role in the movie where he meets Jones and hears the story, and it kind of opens and closes with Orwell writing Animal Farm, which is all about, it's written from the, it's written about those times and totalitarianism and other things while he's in England and after he's heard the story. So I'm not entirely sure how much of it is true and which parts are not true, but it was a good story, and it is based on real events, and it's based on things that I didn't know a lot about. So I enjoyed it.
Quite the jump from shiny Pokemon.
I know it is a little heavy, I suppose, but like you, I've been a little busy lately, and I haven't seen a lot else. I also watched Greyhound, which is the Tom Hanks movie. It's okay.
It's okay.
Yeah, it's okay. I mean, if you have a free subscription, definitely watch it. But I liked Mr. Jones better, so that's
okay.
It is what it is. All right, Federico. Well, I think that's it for this week. It's nice to do this one with you. I did it by myself last week, and it's a little bit of a marathon.
You did an excellent job.
Thank you. It's a little bit of a marathon to talk for 25 minutes all by yourself, but I got through it, and I enjoyed doing that. It was kind of an experiment and a new thing for me. But I want to thank our sponsor again, and that is Magic Lasso Adblock, for both sponsoring the show and the whole site. And of course, you can find me and Federico over at MacStories.net. Federico is at Vitici on Twitter and Instagram. That's VITICCI. And I'm at John Voorhees, JOHNVORHWS. Talk to you next Friday, Federico.
Ciao, John.